so I guess Mavis Dracula. I guess maybe she has a different singing voice or something. Because on Wikipedia it has
Hold up.
younger version of the character. That's
Um,
why.
so okay, so we're gonna welcome to part two, everybody. Um, for whatever reason, my computer errored out. Not in the normal way it errors out. Totally new way, but now it means that this is two parts. But that's okay. That's okay. Get rid of that. Let's jump back into this. So Jordan, let's begin again. You were telling me about the Invisible Man. I heard none of what you said about it. So start from the beginning
So
if you would.
before I do, I just want to note that it's weird. On stream, I see you. On my screen, I don't.
Really?
On my screen, it's just your profile picture.
Oh,
Not a big deal,
let's turn it back on.
but
How about now?
nope, still just your profile picture.
Very strange. Discord. Anyway,
Anyway,
so we're yeah
it
we're
only
gonna
matters. It only matters that it shows up on stream.
yeah.
Invisible Man. I mean, I what I said was good movie. Follows the plot of the. Oh, sorry. Follows the plot of your standard Invisible Man story. Scientist turns himself invisible, slowly goes crazy, does violence against people. Um, it's a good movie. It's enjoyable. What I sort of discovered watching it and watching The Mummy is that Dracula is boring and the other monsters are far more interesting.
See what you should have done in retrospect is you should have watched one Dracula movie and then watched all the other monster movies and then made the case that yeah Dracula is boring and I switched gears midway and then just not said anything and I would have been
You're
like, why are
right.
you watching The Mummy? No reason.
You're right. I should have, but I didn't think of it.
Every
I,
episode of the
I,
show is a
I
learning experience.
really, really wanted to try and push through and try and stick with the chosen monster that I had, and I did for the actual picks. It just meant that I didn't have a lot of rapid fire.
So okay, so for the rest of my
That's
rapid
my
fire,
that's it. That's it for me.
I got a bunch. So we're gonna separate this into categories. We're gonna start with, and we're gonna do this fast. So we're gonna do the what I call the weird Frankenstein movies. Starting with Victor Frankenstein, which I had seen. That's the one where it's Daniel Radcliffe and James McAvoy. James McAvoy is Frankenstein, and the gimmick this time is that it's told from Igor's perspective. So it's like Igor has met him basically while he's at school studying to build the monster, and it's about how him and Igor meet. And he basically finds Igor in the circus, and he takes him from being like a circus hunchback. He's like half Igor and half the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And the monster is not really all that interesting. He just kind of becomes a mindless monster. There's no nuance to him. It's not really about the monster so much as it is about the relationship between Igor and Frankenstein, which is not particularly interesting. Not a very good movie. The next one is I, Frankenstein, which is basically what if it's basically like a sequel to Frankenstein because it takes place after the Frankenstein story. So Frankenstein has chased the Frankenstein's monster to the Arctic and has died. And then it turns out, Jordan, that demons and angels are real. And demons try to attack Frankenstein's monster and kill him. And then he's saved by gargoyles who are created by angels to fight demons. And it basically it flashes forward to the modern day, and Frankenstein's monster, now named Adam, is in the modern day, and he fights demons. That's what it's about. And it's kind of like, sorry, you were gonna say something.
I was gonna say, just by description, these movies don't sound very good.
And the most interesting part of I, Frankenstein to me was how it took place in an alternative 21st century where Frankenstein is a real person and is a mythological figure who who may have brought him back. So he's kind of like I can't think of a good comparison, but he was a real person who actually might have brought someone back to life, but they have no proof and can't prove it. So he's like, I can't think, yeah, like Bigfoot or like, you know, like one of those like conspiracy, like, yeah, Frankenstein was real and he did manage to bring someone back to life.
Right. Right. Like Moses
Yeah, yeah. Um,
or Jesus.
or no, Jesus was a real person. He was.
Right, but I more meant like the people being like he was a real person and he did all those things that made him divine.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. And then, and then. Sorry, I'm just working through what I want to
No,
do.
no, no, and then that's it. That's all I'm ordering. And
Um,
then, and then.
Sorry. Oh shit, I messed up. That's my I had seen. Sorry, that's not rapid fire. That's my had seen. So that's it for Victor Frankenstein. I messed up. That's my bad. I messed up the thing here. I have one more. You know,
Are you
yeah,
sure it's a rapid fire, Justin?
yes. One more. One. My last one. My last rapid fire is I watched Young Frankenstein. It was pretty good. The idea here being, what if Frankenstein's grandson was ashamed? What if Frankenstein was real and his grandson was deeply ashamed of what he did? Basically, like it's like his big family shame that people think that he had brought this monster to life, and so he doesn't want to be called. He doesn't want to be associated with the family. So he's changed his name to Frankenstein, and he
Frankenstein.
does not want to be called Frankenstein because he's embarrassed of this thing, and it's about him. He creates a Frankenstein monster, whatever, and it's all for one joke, which is that Frankenstein's monster has a huge dick. That's I'm not even kidding. It's they like one thing that a lot of these we're gonna talk about it with in the hadn't seen the big full report, but I mentioned the him being 7 foot tall. Um, 7 foot tall. That's a thing that most of these movies kind of miss, except for the Boris Karloff one and the Young Frankenstein, where he's like 7 foot tall. So there's a bit early on where they're like, oh, yeah, he's reading through the journal. Like, oh, that's how he did it. He had to make the proportions gigantic. So his arms, his legs, his head, his organs all have to be huge. And then the girl's like, what was his Schweitzengala? Would that also be huge? And he's like, I suppose it would be. And then then at the end of the movie, young Frankenstein just decides that he's going to help the Frankenstein's monster be liked by people. So he teaches them how to dance and stuff and be happy. He doesn't dance super well, and so the villagers are like boo, and they start throwing shit at him. And the Frankenstein's like, don't embarrass him. You don't want to embarrass him. That could cause violence for your own safety. And he kidnaps his fiance or whatever. And yeah, it turns out he's got a massive schlong. And so the end of the joke that the movie ends on is Frankenstein invents a machine that basically gives the monster part of his intelligence. And the girl's like, what did you get in exchange for a part of your brain? And
His penis.
it's his penis, part of his penis. He got a bit of his penis, so he's got a bigger penis now.
I mean, we've all wished that.
We've all,
We've all been
I mean,
there.
who hasn't wished for a few more inches on the penis? I mean, who hasn't? Who hasn't? We've all been there. We've
We've
all
all
been
been there.
highly
Uh,
relatable experience. That's the end of rapid fire. That's it.
that's
That's all.
very, that's very, that's very funny.
That's all. That's all of the rapid fire. So, Jordan, what was the first? What was the first movie? As a tradition here at the spur of the moment, what is the first? Was the first Dracula movie you had seen before?
Well, as is the case, I in the moment could only think of so many movies, and then afterwards thought of at least one more that I could have watched. But the one that I'm starting with is called Dracula Untold.
Oh yes,
Um,
Dracula Untold.
it's action horror. It's real.
Yeah, it's supposed
You
to. It's
know,
the one of the ones where it's the this is the origin of how he becomes Dracula.
yeah. But it's like they wanted it to be like realistic.
Yeah.
And so, man wants power to stop Ottoman Empire from killing his people. He's a prince.
He's Vlad the
He's
Impaler. He's Vlad the Impaler.
Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah, he's Vlad
It's
the Impaler.
fun.
They're like, what if Vlad the Impaler were a good guy actually? What if Dracula were a good guy actually? Yeah, the most interesting bit about that movie is how it was supposed to launch it was supposed to launch the Dark Universe.
The game is on.
The game is on. The game is on, everybody.
Um, it's fine for what it is. Like it's not like revolutionizing anything by any means, but like I'm not gonna lie and say it's not fun to watch a superpowered man turn into bats and like make his way through an entire army of people like single-handedly. Um, there's some fun fight scenes which I like. It's certainly of the Dracula movies I've watched one of the more like enjoyable ones. Um,
I mean, yeah, like I mean, the original Dracula basically boils down to like, I mean, we're gonna talk about it obviously, but oh yeah, he's kind of a weird guy and he bites you. Like it's just
and
like,
he well not bite he drinks you
yeah,
he murders people. And it's like we'll get to that one, but this one it's like yeah, I mean if you like a by paint by numbers action movie, that's what you're getting.
yeah, it's a
You're
okay action movie that didn't make a ton of money, so they didn't make any more. It's one of those.
Oh, I mean, it had a budget of 70 million and it made 217.1 million.
Yeah, wow,
So,
it did okay.
more than probably what most people would think.
Yeah,
It has that dude, the main actor is that dude who looks like Orlando Bloom but isn't Orlando Bloom.
yep.
But like you would be totally like I'd forgive you if you thought he was
You'd be
Orlando
like, wait,
Bloom.
wasn't Orlando Bloom in that Dracula movie? You'd be like, no,
And
it wasn't.
no, actually, it was Luke Evans, just a guy who looks like
He
him.
just really looks like Orlando Bloom. Um,
But yeah, that's my first pick.
yeah,
It's fine.
it's fine. That one was supposed, and then they tried to do it again with the Mummy with Tom Cruise, and they've never managed to launch that universe successfully. I think maybe start with a Frankenstein movie. I think that's where we got to start, but not the bad I
Or
Frankenstein one, which I described earlier.
either either you start with a Frankenstein or you start with a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Oh, it's funny. The thing I forgot to mention about I Frankenstein is it's one of those movies you're watching it, and you're like, the best way I could describe when I was watching it, I'm like, this feels like it's based on a comic book, but in like a mid 2000s X-Men Blade way, where it's like this feels like it's based on a comic book and it's going out of its way to introduce elements that are clearly a thing from the comic book. Like this is very clearly supposed to be the origin of this character who had like it's just about setting up a status quo, and like it just ached to be a franchise. Like this thing wants to be a franchise.
Mm.
It's just so funny that yours, Dracula Untold, is the same way. It wants to be a franchise
Oh,
so
absolutely.
badly. Wants to be
It
a
wants to set
franchise.
up into a franchise, and it's like it just didn't do well enough to
Yeah.
get that.
Like, oh, honey, that was bold. You're bold. I respect you. I respect you for the effort, but no,
It was in that period of time
no,
when
no.
like every movie had that stinger where it was like wanting to be the next Avengers.
Right? Um. Train of thought. Right. So anyway, Dracula Untold. Is there anything else to say about that movie?
No, that's about it. It's a pretty paint by numbers action movie. If you
What's
like action movies, then you'll probably enjoy that.
what is the second one you had seen?
The second one that I had seen is actually four movies because then this was part of why I didn't have rapid fires because I just didn't have time. Um, I watched all four Hotel Transylvanias,
Watched all of
which
the Hotel Transylvania.
brings all of the monster movie universe characters together in like a parody of them.
Yeah.
Um, it's for me, I like those movies, but it's a sliding progression. It starts off strong and just kind of goes down from there. Um,
I've seen the fourth one. I'm completely aware I've seen the fourth one. I could not tell you apart from the thing where I'm sure we're
the
talking
ge-
about.
the general premise of it.
Yeah, I know it was on Amazon Prime. I know I watched it and I know it was bad. So that I remember.
Um, so one thing that I will say about the Hotel Transylvania movies, which I didn't realize until I just watched this Invisible Man movie. So in the Hotel Transylvania movies, the Invisible Man is called Griffin, which was the name of the character in this
Yeah,
Invisible Man movie.
yeah.
So it's like I didn't really think that that was because I mean considering like in Hotel Transylvania the mummy is called Murray, and it's like what's his real name? Like Amen Cap Tap
Uh, e-
Maradada
Emotap.
Bing Bong
Emotap.
Emotep,
Emotap.
which doesn't sound anything like Murray.
I mean, I guess they get it from Mo Murray. I guess
Or the Wolf Man is Wayne.
that I don't know. I don't know the. Yeah, I'm sure maybe that's a reference to the original Wolfman character.
Maybe that's his actual name.
I
I don't
don't.
know. Frank and Frankenstein makes sense. Like
Yeah,
that's logical. Drac, they call Dracula Drac. Like that all checks out. So it's just like I don't know. I didn't really think that the actual character's name would be Griffin.
right.
So the fact that it is just kind of
Well,
I'm
my
like,
favorite
oh,
is
that's a nice touch that I now retroactively respect about these
the
movies.
one that made me laugh that you probably now get is Van Helsing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's a Dracula.
he's a
He's
Dracula.
Dracula's main villain.
Yeah, he's a Dracula character.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah. So him being in the third one and fourth one is like, oh, okay, that's kind of a cool touch. Like there's a lot of in these four movies, um, and show which I didn't watch. There's a lot of there's a lot of fun, like fun little nods, like you know how Frankenstein has his bride, which I now know, you know, Bride of Frankenstein.
yep,
Like
yeah,
that checks out.
yep.
Um, that being said, I can't talk about these movies and not talk about how the fourth one has just a significant and noticeable drop in animation
Which really
quality.
says something considering these movies weren't exactly like the high end of animated quality.
No, but that it oh, oof,
Yeah, no,
oof,
there's a discernible.
oof.
I
There's
mean,
a noticeable and discernible difference between going from the third one to the fourth one.
which like it's usually because you're paying you take they take a different quality because the budget's reduced, but they still have to pay the celebrity voice cast. That's usually why. Like if you see a movie that has like a crap ton of celebrity voice cast in it, it's so cheap looking because half the budget goes to the celebrity voice cast. But
Oh
like
yeah.
that one doesn't have Adam Sandler in it, which is my like my case for what I'm like. You can recast any character and no one will notice because no one noticed
It
that they recast Adam
it
Sandler in that
doesn't
movie.
it doesn't have Adam Sandler. It doesn't have Kevin James. It doesn't have Sadie Sandler playing Winnie. Uh, there's a few characters
Anyone
that got.
connected to Adam Sandler by the sounds of it.
Uh, I mean, like I said, a number of
That
characters.
still to this day, that bothers me. That's still one of the most scummy things I've ever seen anyone do. I felt so bad because he was so proud of it, and they wanted to bury it. Like they did not want people to know that he wasn't in that movie. They wanted people to know he was in that movie because he's been playing Dracula for a while. Like Adam Sandler hasn't played Dracula since the third movie, and there's been
He played Brian Holt plays Dracula in the short film Monster Pets.
yep.
He played him in the Hotel Transylvania Scary Tea Adventures game, and in the fourth movie.
Yeah, he's a voice match. So there
Yeah.
must be something where it's like they're not allowed to say that that they've just voice matched him or something, or it must be a union thing where he's
I'm
just not
guessing
on
it.
the
I'm
same
guessing.
level as Andy Samberg and Selena Gomez. Like he's just not
Oh yeah.
anywhere
Oh,
near
I mean,
them.
yeah, he would be far lower,
But
like far lower.
but like he's playing the lead character. Like he's in the movie the most, and he's like bottom. He's bottom of the cast list. It's kind of
I
wild.
would say he's in the movie as much as Adam Sandberg for sure,
Yeah,
considering like
as much as
they
that.
share
Like if it
they
was like
share screen time.
yeah, like it's like he's like the pretty much the main character of that movie. If it was a thing of like Mavis took, it's so weird. You couldn't get that tells me that Adam Sandler must have left at a
Well, what's
late
weird?
point in the production process because
No, I don't think so. Considering the point of the third one is that Dracula retired. He
sure,
retired from the cat. Like that. If you were gonna make a fourth one, quite frankly, if you weren't getting Adam Sandler back, his character retired in the third
Well,
one.
that's
You
what I'm
didn't
saying.
need to bring back the character at all.
What I'm saying is well, I'm guessing Adam Sandler must have left because early on because yeah, you're right. If he wasn't in this, why is the character in this? Other than he's the I guess the main one, but yeah, you could like if Adam Sandler wasn't gonna come back like right away, like you knew immediately he wasn't gonna come back, you would have written the story more Mavis and Andy Samberg forward. I can't remember his character. Johnny
And
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 Mavis forward. Or you would have
and
aged up the son and have him be a teenager.
and that's not even talking about. And this is a thing that frustrates me, irritates me about this. For it's the thing that it's the pardon the expression. It's the nail in the coffin for me for this movie. Is okay. Voice matching, like voices are changed, and that bothers me. Animation is bad, and that drives me crazy. Dracula has learned the lesson of the movie in
I know.
three other movies.
I know.
Like
It's the same movie for a fourth
accepted
time.
he accepted humans in the third. By the third one, he had already accepted humans,
Yeah.
and then for some reason he doesn't like
He's got a beef with Johnny again, which he's
Johnny
already gotten
again.
over 2 movies ago.
Like I don't why like no like if anything, this should have been like a time jump to where like now the Denisovich is like a preteen or whatever,
Yeah.
and Mavis and him are now the adults, and he starts dating like some girl or
Yeah.
whatever, and or some like some other, maybe they have another kid or something, or like some other conflict. Dracula did not need to be in,
Well, that's,
other than like as a tertiary background
well, that's what I'm
character.
saying. Is that's why I think Adam Sandler was involved. I think he was cast up into the point where maybe they were animating it. He was involved because otherwise, yeah, if you're just gonna voice match him, move him into the background where people won't notice unless they knew pretty immediately it wasn't. I thought it was supposed to go to theaters, but maybe it wasn't, and it was always going to go to streaming, and they knew they could get
I
away with it.
I I suspect it was always going to streaming, just judging by
I
the
could have
quality of it.
sworn that it sat in it sat around for a while because it was supposed to go to theaters, and then COVID happened.
I could believe that
This is a
like
COVID
the
victim that I know
first
for sure.
I could believe that the first interpretation of the script, they had like a script in the back or whatever, that maybe when it was first written it was meant to be in theaters, but then by the time they got to it, no, I think like while it was being made, it was always going on streaming, just judging by the quality.
Yeah, I'm pretty positive from what I remember, because I remember it was a big deal that Amazon bought it because Amazon bought it for a shit ton of money, like a lot of money. Like they bought it for
Let's
a lot of money.
let's read a little bit about the production. 2019, Sony Pictures has announced that a fourth film had been in development. Uh, oh, that might be another reason why it's different. I think it has a different director.
Oh, that makes sense.
Jendi Tartovsky in October 2019 confirmed that he would not direct the film.
They've
Then in
they've
2020,
never said
storyboard.
or acknowledged why Adam Sandler left.
Apparently, Tartovsky wrote the screenplay.
That explains why Dracula's in it so much.
Uh, Production took place during COVID. Uh, doesn't really say whether it was meant to go to theater or not.
Yeah, I just remember that Amazon. I'm pretty sure it was Amazon. I remember Amazon buying it was like there was a huge announcement for it. Like it was a big thing because that was like during like peak COVID. That was when.
Here it is. Here it is. In August 2021, Sony Pictures canceled the film's theatrical plans and entered discussions to sell the distribution rights to a streaming service in response to the rising cases of the SARS-CoV-2 Delta variant in the United States.
Yep. Exactly it. Exactly what I remember.
Apparently, it had a limited theatrical release on February 25th, 2022.
Oh,
On March 7th, 2022, it was announced that the film would have a theatrical release in China beginning April 3rd of that year.
oh, interesting. Yeah.
Fun little bit of trivia there for you.
But it's bad. It's a bad movie. It's
But
not a good movie.
another funny thing about in Hotel Transylvania 4, This is one of the few things that now makes me laugh. Um, when the Wolfman, Frankenstein, Invisible Man, and Mummy get turned into their respective human forms, as the Invisible Man is turning back, or is becoming visible, you find out that the entire time throughout all the movies he's been walking around naked,
Yeah, yeah.
which fun fact is a reference back to the original, like
Oh yeah,
to the
yeah.
Invisible Man,
The
where it's
clothes
like,
don't
yeah,
turn
no,
invisible.
the clothes don't turn invisible, which I was like, ah, it's funny that they actually acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And so then at the end of the movie, once he's invisible again, he starts taking the clothes off, and I think it's the Wolf Man. He's like, nah, 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 nah. Like you keep those clothes on. You being invisible isn't an excuse to be able to walk around naked.
That
Which I'm like, that's funny. That's a funny joke.
is
But
funny.
that's all I really have to say about these movies. They're fun. They're cute. I mean,
They're all right until the last one.
they're they're yeah, yeah, pretty much, and they're a fun parody of like those old Universal monster movies.
So did I guess for you it'd be retroactive because you watched Dracula afterwards. But when you were watching Dracula, was there moments of like, oh, so that's what that's ah.
Certain things like the outfit and the stiffness in which he moved, because like with Dracula, I mean they kind of, as the movies go on, they step away from it, but it's like he's very like stiff and
Yeah,
like you know, like where he moves around, he's like da 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 da. So it's like kind of certain elements I kind of see, but I mean these characters are basically like what if the monsters were good?
yeah, yeah.
So it's kind of like the complete antithesis of what these characters are,
I
which is the
mean,
point. Which is the point.
not so much Frankenstein's monster per se.
Is he a good guy?
By the end of it, it's kind. No, not really.
Uh, no. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I'm talking. Certainly like the
I
werewolf,
suppose
which is
it
just a dad,
depends on the version of
and
him, I suppose.
the mummy, which is just a nice dude,
Yeah, he's
or
just a decent guy.
or Frankenstein, who, I mean, they haven't drank human blood in years, Justin. They do animal blood now.
But I mean, to be fair, didn't that movie make the case that they used to be and that they've just gotten old now and they're like middle aged?
The point is that
We used to be
when
that way, and then we
when
got
they were
old.
younger, they were like that. But it's like we haven't done that in a while. We're civilized now,
We're a civilized bunch.
pretty much since Dracula made the. I believe what Frankenstein says in the second one is we don't need to do that anymore, because like this is a world where like the monsters have come out, especially like by the second one, the monsters have come out and are just part of society and people just accept them.
Right? Yeah. Right, because like part of the
Um,
second one is they have to go to the suburbs or whatever to like meet his
yeah,
parents.
and
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and like his parents have monsters that live in the neighborhood and stuff, and so like by the second one, humans have largely just accepted that like the monsters and are okay with it,
yeah,
which is probably the most unrealistic. Forget that Frankenstein and Dracula and all of them are in this movie. The
yeah.
most unrealistic part of the movie is that humans accepted them.
Right. My thing with these movies and like any movie with like like long running franchises with child characters. You said yeah, the fourth one should have been about Denisovich or whatever. He's a teenager now. I think that would have been way more.
Dennis, yeah,
Dennis, he's a teenager. I think you're right. That would be interesting. Like he's a teenager. He's lived at Hotel Transylvania his whole life, and he wants to leave now. Like he's like I want to go leave or whatever. And now it's come back around. It's like for me, like Despicable Me 4 became decidedly less interesting when I saw that the girls were still kids. I'm like, it's not. I kind of had that
yeah.
realization about South Park where I was like, I kind of wish these animated shows had let the kids grow up organically on them. And then it's like, yeah, because there's got to be a point where you get
Sometimes,
because there's a lot of episodes of The Simpsons where it's like Bart has like a teenage 16-year-old girlfriend where it's like this makes me uncomfy and it feels like they want Bart to be a teenager. So it's like just let these characters age organically and just like hang out in the area of being a teenager because you can tell with South Park that South Park in particular, that they're getting bored of writing stories for 8-year-olds. Like
Yeah.
they want to be able to write stories about teenagers. So it's like then they do
Well,
it.
I mean, to be fair, when you've been doing like 30 seasons or whatever, or even 20 seasons of a show, yeah, eventually it's gonna stagnate and you're gonna get bored. You're creatively, how many times can you do the same stories over and over again, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to break out of it, and yeah, that I mean, if it, with South Park, like that's what you have all these specials. Okay, use those to do like one of them is like about the teenage kids, one of them is about the
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Use those as an excuse if you have to break out of these mold the mold that you've been
Oh,
stuck in.
speaking of South
Simpsons,
Park.
Simpsons, I think it's too late. Like the one way you could do it with Simpsons is you do another Simpsons movie where they're like adults or whatever,
Yeah.
and you use that to set up a new show
Yeah.
like and then you cancel the
Well,
Simpsons
what I
as
would
it is.
do is I would I mean my how I would end the Simpsons, and I've always said this. I think I made a couple of videos about it. But how I would end the Simpsons is do basically do the that Days of Future Past episode or whatever, where it's the future, and have it be the future, and do like it like
You're cutting out real bad.
there we go. Do it where it's like, yeah, it cuts to the future, and I think I said like have it where like kill Homer, have Homer die, and have it where they're all around him and make it real sad and weepy, and then just do like a slew of celebrity voice cameos, just like voice cameo after voice cameo after voice cameo. But importantly, have it where it like flashes. I think I said like make it where it's about Bart becoming a teenager, and have it where it's like Bart as an adult, and then yeah, Homer dies, and have Homer dying be like a metaphor or a symbol for the Simpsons finally ending. I think, because to me, as much as Bart became the symbol for the symbol for the Simpsons, I think Homer way more symbolizes what people think of when they think the Simpsons. I think they think Homer Simpson more than they do Bart Simpson.
I think they think both.
I don't know. I think to me he's more, and also I think I mean, sure you could kill Bart, but I think it would mean more if you killed Homer. Like everyone's like dad.
But
Um,
anyway, that's my second pick, which was actually four movies.
yeah, I mean, for me, I already said mine. It was I Frankenstein. We talked about I Frankenstein. Um, but my other one that I had seen was the Frankenstein movie, the original 1930s Frankenstein movie, which incredibly is a very bad adaptation of Frankenstein. I also watched Bride of Frankenstein as well, because the original Frankenstein, it only has like one section of the book. It doesn't have the monster getting smarter. It doesn't have him killing the family. It doesn't have any of that. Frankenstein kills like one girl, and it's an accident. He like runs into her, and they like play, and he like thinks he's playing, and just tosses her into the river, and she drowns. But that's kind of it. It cuts out all the nuance. It cuts out all the like everything about the character that makes him sympathetic and interesting. And then it just kind of ends. Like they get him into this windmill, and they set the windmill on fire, and you think the monster is dead and that Frankenstein is dead, and then it just kind of stops. And then Bride of Frankenstein picks up, and it does all that backstory shit that I mentioned to you before, where he meets the blind guy, and there's this really funny scene. The one thing that was kind of interesting about Young Frankenstein, to go back to Young Frankenstein real quick, is that movie is very much a parody of these 1930s movies. And so there's a scene in the Young Frankenstein where like there's this blind man, and he's feeding the monster like wine and having him smoke cigars, and the monster accidentally burns himself with the cigar. And that was a joke I appreciated, because it's from this really weird scene, which is just that, where he's like, yes, you take the cigar and you smoke it. You smoke. It's super weird. And it's one of the few times where he actually brings the bride to life, and she sees Frankenstein. She freaks out, the monster, and she freaks out. And what's weird about Bride of Frankenstein, where instead of having the monster be smart and have him blackmail Frankenstein into creating a wife for him, there's another evil scientist character who like creates people in jars. Like that's what he's done. He's got a bunch of people in jars. He's got like this king. He's like, there's the king and he's in a jar. And it's an impressive special effect. It's like a jar that's about this big and there's a little person in it. And like this movie came out in 1935. So the ability to make like a little person look like they're in a jar, and the king keeps trying to get out to get at the princess. The princess who is another girl in a jar, and the priest is judging the king for trying to get at the princess, and there's a moment where the king like breaks out of the jar and tries to go for the princess, and he's like he's like that tall. It's like, yeah, it's 1930s movie making. It's impressive, and I just something about watching movies that are that old where you realize how much you take certain like filmmaking things for granted when you're watching like a modern movie. And I'm sure you probably will get to you how you felt about it. But there's just certain things with modern movie making that we take for granted that you notice when you're watching a movie from the 1940s. Framing, cinematography, like movies from the 1930s are dull. Like they're dull looking because a lot of times when it came to movies from that era, it was just taking stage plays and putting them on
Yeah.
the screen. So it's a lot of like
Yeah.
simple camera angles, simple camera techniques. So the original 1930s Frankenstein and yours as well actually, they were based on plays originally. So they're not
Yep.
based on the movies. They're based on plays, or they're not based on the books. So this is not an adaptation of the book. This is an adaptation of a play, which is really interesting.
Yeah. Which is why Bela Lugosi ended up being in mine, because he did the stage performance of it.
Yes, he did. And what's interesting is Bela Lugosi, who plays Dracula, he eventually plays Frankenstein's monster as well in future things. But the most interesting thing for me about that original movie, far more interesting than the movie itself, which if you've never seen the original Frankenstein, you're doing yourself a disservice. You should watch it. But it's interesting to me that that's the version of Frankenstein that you knew, right? That most people know. And that's, while kind of close to the book in the sense that like he's gigantic, like he's supposed to be like 7 feet tall. But he's not a monosyllabic character. And what's interesting is most people remember the first movie, but the second movie he speaks in full sentences. Like he talks in that movie because that's a reference back to the original book where he talks and he gets taught English. The guy teaches him English. So like he talks. So yeah, so it's just a lot of stuff like there's a scene where when he brings the guy to life and there's a lightning storm and you can't hear any of the dialogue.
Fire bad.
Fire bad, yeah. Also everyone thinks that the assistant's name is Igor, which he is not. In the original, the assistant's name is Felix. It wasn't until the movie The Son of Frankenstein where the character of Igor appears. So that's where Igor comes from. It doesn't come from the original. It does not come from the original.
Plans.
It does not come from the original Frankenstein. Also in that movie, his name is Henry Frankenstein, not Victor Frankenstein. For some reason, they switched two of the characters' names. It's very odd. But that was the original Frankenstein. That movie's interesting. In terms of a relic of films gone by, it's certainly an interesting experiment. Or it's an interesting experience, I should say. So that's the ones we'd seen. What are some of the ones you hadn't seen, Jordan? What's the first one you hadn't seen?
Well, first one, we're just going to talk about it. I watched the original 1931 Dracula movie. It was very old.
It was very so for you as a person who, I mean, you don't watch movies that old. You're not an old movie watching guy, which is why it's fun for me to get you to, because what did you have any realizations about film before we talk about the content of the movie itself? Did you have any realizations about film, about movie watching generally? Did it change anything for you? Like, did you appreciate modern movie making sense a little bit more?
I mean, yeah, I certainly came to realize that with the ability to put, I'm struggling to find my words here, with the ability to put things like green screens and CG and stuff like that, we are now capable of having entire worlds that we couldn't have before. This very much felt like I was watching a stage production.
Yeah. Yeah,
but on TV.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what a lot of those when you think of it from that perspective.
For most of the scenes anyway. Like there's some where they're on a boat and stuff where it's like they have to actually film on the boat
Yeah.
and they don't have sound equipment and it's just it feels dated. Um, and scenes like that, I really become aware of what year it is.
Yeah, like
Um,
when people talk and there's long scenes of dialogue in those movies where it's like one static shot of three people talking for 15 minutes at a time, you're like, oh, thank God these movies
like
are
or
short.
like for example when the dude shows up at the castle and Dracula is like they're walking through the castle or whatever. Like I could picture that being on a stage.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Um, stuff like that.
Dracula's
Um,
castle, so
I
Dracula's house, some
also
of the set work is pretty impressive in that movie.
the castle, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, um, I just became aware that this was a pre-code movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this was the movie that was before the Hollywood Code, which
hmm
is a whole thing.
My movie is
Um,
also pre-code. After the code, actually, remember how I mentioned? I don't know if does yours have any post-code cutscenes? Well, I'll tell you mine when you
uh,
look it up. For me, the scene I mentioned where he tosses the little girl in the water, that scene got cut. It wasn't in the movie for like 50 years because it was deemed too violent. And literally, all he does is just kind of fireman toss this girl in water. It's really not all that violent looking. I'd be surprised if it
okay,
wasn't.
censorship. The film was originally released with a running time of 85. That explains a lot of 80 because it's only like an hour 10.
Yeah.
Um, it was originally released with a running time of 85 minutes. When it was reissued in 1936, the production code was enforced. Two scenes are known to have been censored. Most significant deletion was an epilogue, which played only during the film's initial run, in a scene similar to the prologue from Frankenstein, and also featuring Universal stalwart Edward Van Sloan. Reappeared in a curtain speech, informed the audience, "Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen, a word before you go. We hope the memories of Dracula and Renfield won't give you bad dreams, so just a word of reassurance. When you get home tonight, the lights have turned out, and the lights have been turned out, and you are afraid to look behind the curtains, and you dread to see a face appear at the window. Why, just pull yourself together and remember that after all, there are such things as vampire." This epilogue was removed out of fear of encouraging a belief in the supernatural.
That's so fun. See
The scene, the scene, the scene was briefly shown in the Road to Dracula documentary, but it may be unusable and can now not be restored.
that's so fun. That's so funny. That's very funny to me. I had a similar thing reading about Frankenstein, where I was like, the idea of what people found scary back in the day, man. I don't think Frankenstein's particularly scary. I certainly think it's a cautionary tale about hubris, but I don't think it's very scary. But they found the
Yeah,
idea of, and that's the thing with Frankenstein, where it's like they find the idea of like creating life that isn't created by God. They find that to be an affront, and that's a major theme in those books.
an, an abomination.
Yeah. Um, does Dracula say blah blah blah?
He in fact does not say blah blah blah.
That's what. Yeah.
He
He does
I
not say
I
blah blah blah.
don't I don't say blah 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 except for when I'm saying how I don't say blah blah blah.
He doesn't. He does in fact not say blah blah blah. What's interesting though
Um,
about Dracula
but
is how much of
it
the. Sorry, go on. Go on. Sorry.
I was just gonna say I was just gonna say it's it's kind of a the I d- it just sort of stops.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So
Um,
so does
I I
mine.
w-
'Cause,
I
yeah.
I I would say that it doesn't have a satisfying ending. That's one thing that I've noticed a difference between older films and modern films is most modern films, at least for the most part, have an ending.
I would not be surprised if there's a second one, which is the second, because mine was like that. Mine was like, yeah, it just the first one just kind of stops, and then the second one picks up immediately, and just kind of feels like the second half of that movie, complete with like actual
I
ending.
mean,
So I wouldn't be surprised if there was
I
a
don't
sequel
know.
that was the rest of that movie.
I'm not really sure how there would be, considering the way that it ends is Dracula gets a stake through the heart and dies.
I mean, it'll turn out that he didn't die. That's how movies back then like that worked. Like there's like a bajillion of those movies. Like apparently for me, there's at
I
least two
suppose.
more sequels, and apparently the last one, The Son of Frankenstein, apparently is quite good. But yeah, that's because film be expensive, yo, and they had to like. I
The
noticed
other
that
thing,
when I was watching you watch it, of like every line is like they say a line, cut. They say a line, cut, because you had to be very aware of how much film you,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
also why those movies are so short.
Um, um, One thing that so even by 1930s time, Dracula was eccentric, like he looked eccentric and was weird. So the fact that anyone trusts him anywhere ever is kind of just that's weird to me. Like he met people, and I mean, I guess maybe that's why he immigrates to England in that movie because in England people walked around with the cape and the top hat and it but like when he's when you see people in America, it's like no, they're very much wearing like a suit,
Right?
like a normal suit and like a Dracula outfit. There's no other way to describe his outfit other than a Dracula
I
outfit.
mean, yeah, but back then they didn't
Um,
know what a Dracula
and
outfit
like
looked like.
he stands out.
I
He
mean,
looks
yeah,
weird.
yeah. I know what you mean. I know. He's just
Sure, but
immediately
his outfit
suspicious.
looks whether 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 or not like we identify it as a Dracula outfit, but like I'm saying that even by that day's time, it didn't look like what their normal outfits looked like. It to me anyway, from what I saw, stood out like a sore thumb
I
for
mean,
most of the scenes.
it's fair. That is fair. Um, oh yeah, the thing that that one of the things that always fascinated me about Dracula is how much stuff gets lost from that original, like how much vampire stuff has gotten lost over the years, like the having to be invited in and like you have to stab him when he's in his coffin, and I think that one doesn't have garlic. I think
What's
garlic's
weird?
not in that one.
No, it didn't have garlic. But what's weird is so the being invited in thing doesn't seem to be a thing in this movie because there's scenes where the windows are open and he just flies in and it's like I mean, I suppose if you're doing like a monkey paw situation, you could theoretically read an open window as an invitation, but to me that's like there's that where is so if I just leave my front door open because it's hot, am I inviting someone in? Is that does that constitute as inviting someone in?
But isn't it? Is it? Does it work like you only need to be invited in once? Because he was invited in the first time, and then at that point he's been invited in, so maybe he can go in.
I mean, that's a good point, but that's also a question. Is it does a vampire and maybe I just don't know my vampire lore.
I
Does a
don't.
vampire need to be invited in each time? Does it is it once and then it's forever? What are the rules here? I don't really
I
know.
mean, presumably
I
once is
what
all
I've
it
sort of
takes.
what I've what I've sort of discovered over the course of this week is when it comes to these monster movies, I don't actually know a lot about them other than the generic what people know, like
Yeah,
Frankenstein, Monster, Fire, Bad, Wolfman, Moon, Kill People, Invisible Man,
same.
apparently a murderer now I know. Mummy was a mummy.
It was a mummy.
Like that
Um,
I other than your Dracula sucks blood,
yeah,
can't be invited in, doesn't
he's
like garlic.
he's from
Stake
Transylvania.
stake to the heart.
Was
Like I I know the generic staples of what monster like what these monsters are, but I don't know the
fair
details.
enough. Was there anything else you had to say about Dracula from the 1930s?
It is old.
It is old. It is now probably the oldest movie you've seen.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think you'll watch one earlier. I can't think of a cause to make you watch older movies than that. I mean, if I did, though, they're short. That's the one nice thing. But they're short, but they feel long. Like Frankenstein, you guys, an hour and 10 minutes. I swear it felt like I was watching it for 2 hours. Like those movies feel like they're an
Yeah,
eternity long.
this one felt long.
Um,
Also, it was boring, and I really struggled to stay awake.
what was the second one you hadn't seen? Yeah, so yeah, we have one more. Yeah, what was the second one you hadn't seen?
Second one I haven't seen was called Bonnie and Clyde versus Dracula.
All right.
Because I figured if I was going to do another Dracula movie, it was going to be weird.
of
and
course,
it
and
was.
it was.
Uh, um, yes, it was. I feel like this in this instance, it's probably just going to be best if you just ask me questions.
Sure. So okay, it's Bonnie and Clyde meets Dracula. So I
Yes.
assume Dracula's the bad guy.
He's a bad guy, but
A bad guy. There's
he,
more than one bad guy.
yeah, he's kind of in it less than I would like, honestly. Um, he so basically, um, there's a brother, and
And they're
this
Bonnie
is
and
a very
Clyde.
bad.
Like it's
Oh,
not just like a.
they're Bonnie and
So
Clyde.
it's
So
not
it's
like
funny
they
actually
like.
because the way that the movie starts is you start with these two like a woman and a guy, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, Bonnie's blonde, right? Like historically blonde. Like that's kind of like one of her defining things is
I
she's a blonde woman.
I don't
Every
know.
medium that I've seen,
I want to say
anything that I've ever
yes,
seen
but
her in, anything I've ever seen her in, from Timeless to like other things, like she's always been blonde. So, anyways, the girl that's at the start of the movie is a redhead. So I was very confused. And then she shows up at this house, or like they show up at this house, and that's where Bonnie and Clyde are, and they get murdered. And it's like, okay, yeah, they look more classically like Bonnie and Clyde, like what I would have thought.
okay. So
Dracula is his body. Dracula's body is found before the movie. Is found by this doctor scientist person who is doing experiments on it, and then feeds people. It's kind of confusing. Feeds people to Dracula, and then basically makes a pact with him because I guess he's dying. I guess he has some sort of disease, and he's like, if I can get some of your blood, Sir Dracula, it might counteract my disease. So he's sort of the other villain.
right, okay. So like it's is it just like a traditional Bonnie and Clyde story? Like is it just there's like a it's a biopic kind of thing, like it's about their life, but also Dracula's there?
Not so much, kind of. I would definitely say this is more of a Bonnie and Clyde movie than it is a Dracula movie.
Right.
More like a Bonnie and Clyde movie that features Dracula. Because like a good chunk, like 75-80% of the movie is Bonnie and Clyde.
Just doing Bonnie and
They
Clyde
they
stuff.
pulled a like they pulled a heist. It goes wrong. They're hiding, laying low, and it's about them. And like she wants to live life in the fast lane, and like doesn't. She's like, we can live fast and hard. Basically, I don't care if we die. And he's like, no, no. Like I have like a line that I won't cross. And she's like, her goal throughout the movie is like to prove that he doesn't have a line, and she can push him past it, and it doesn't matter, and it's all dumb and whatever anyway. And so uh there's a firefight. One of their allies gets hurt. Clyde says to Bonnie, like, there's a doctor supposedly in the next house over. Go. And that's the doctor that we've been following, him and his sister, who I can't figure out the sister, if it's supposed to be like, is she sup- is she supposed to
Okay.
be a child,
So
or is she supposed to be an adult who's childlike? Like, there's, I don't, yeah,
so the Dracula
uh,
stuff and the Bonnie and Clyde stuff are just completely unconnected from each other?
until they're not.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
and the Dracula stuff is very very tenuous in the fact that more we're following the Doctor until we hit like the hour 10 mark in
And you're
this
like,
hour
"Oh, there's
30 movie.
Dracula."
And then well, like, Dracula has been in this guy's house and is fed, and so like you saw him but he was weak and like didn't look like Dracula. And then like you see him one, like, the picture that I sent you, you see him and he's like that, and he actually looks like Dracula. And that's just before Bonnie goes to that house and runs into him,
Huh.
and then gets bitten by Dracula and becomes a vampire.
Oh, all right. All right.
And I guess the Doctor has colleagues that he doesn't like, and he feeds them to Dracula. So then Dracula's at full strength, and then Clyde comes looking for Bonnie because she hasn't come back from trying to get the Doctor to heal the one dude.
Right.
Um, and like goes into the house, and Bonnie's been bitten, and Dracula is like, she's mine now, like she belongs to me. And then I kind of wasn't paying attention, and I looked up, and then all of a sudden, Bonnie and Clyde were fighting all the other vampires that were in the room, and everything. So I guess even though she's a vampire, the she resisted Dracula's hold and turned on them all, and they fought. And so the movie basically ends. I don't I think Dracula died, but the movie basically ends where um Bonnie is still a vampire and can't be in the sun, and Clyde feeds her this girl, and like looks visibly uncomfortable, and she's like, thank you, baby, and kisses him on the cheek, and like instead of it being like a lipstick stain, it's like a blood stain kiss
And
on his cheek, and he just looks like unhappy.
so is the
And that's
implication
kind of just how it ends.
so is the implication that they're gonna go off and be Bonnie and Clyde and do Bonnie and Clyde stuff, but also now she's a vampire? Or was the implication is that
That's sort of,
historically Bonnie was just a vampire?
and more the implication is that she's now going to go off and do vampire stuff
Could go do
with
vampires.
Clyde.
I mean,
Bonnie and Clyde vampire stuff.
maybe we'll come back to the wrap up of Dracula here. Maybe we'll come back and we'll be a little more freeform and we'll just do vampires because that reminds me of have you I don't imagine you've seen Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter,
No, I don't think so, but I think I remember hearing about that
where
one.
it's basically like it's Lincoln. What if the movie Lincoln, but there were vampires there, and he also hunted vampires, but he was president. Kind of like Pride and Prejudice and zombies, where it's like, what if it was Pride and Prejudice, but there were zombies?
Um, so one of the things that's weird about this movie, though, which is again, so the doctor has a sister, and I need to talk about this because I don't understand. So he has a sister, and I can't figure out if the intention. And funny enough, normally when we do these, by a little peek behind the curtain, I usually have my Wikipedia up so that I can tell you a little bit, some theoretically. This doesn't have one. I'm on IMDb, but this
Tells
one
me that's
doesn't
a
have a
B movie
Wikipedia.
affair. That's that
Um,
tells me.
oh yeah. Um, like it does not have anybody that you know in it, I guarantee. Um, but um, so the doctor character has a sister who, as far as I can tell, is played by an adult, but the point is supposed to be that like she's child, like she's innocent, like she's childlike, to the point where like Dracula can't touch her
Ah,
because she's so innocent. And so like
ooh,
there's a scene near the end where like she cause, like the brother keeps her in the house, like he has an electric collar on her, um and at the end the collar's off, and she leaves, and like so like she again, she acts very childlike, and I can't figure out if like she's supposed to be a kid, or if she's just supposed to be an adult that's like that childlike. Like I can't figure it out, and it confuses me, and thus it enrages me. And I'm now also finding out I think she might be the brother or related to the director and writer of the movie, Timothy Friend, because the person, the girl, the lady, whatever, who plays this character is named Jennifer Friend.
of course.
And Friend is such a weird last name that I can't imagine that they're not related.
That sure sounds like nepotism.
Or married, married sibling, I don't know. But
But
this character otherwise doesn't really serve a purpose. I don't know why she's there.
huh, interesting. I hate to put a cap on this terrible sounding movie,
So that's all I have to say.
but
That's it.
we're
I
pushing.
mean, we've said all there is.
I'm not. We're pushing 2 hours here. To be fair, my timer might be off because it did run during our during our. I did turn it off mid our little break in the middle there, so I'm hoping that it's not terribly off. But we're pushing 2 hours, and I got two things I got to push through. But we're gonna do them quickly. We're gonna do them quickly. I my two that I hadn't seen was because I did the 1930s one. I read that the most faithful adaptation of Frankenstein is the 1994 one, directed by Kenneth Branagh, who, Jordan, you know as the director of Thor. He directed the first two Thor movies, certainly the first one. I think maybe only the first one. And have you ever seen the Hamlet movie with Robin Williams?
I don't think so.
That was a shot that you might have seen it in high school. He directed that.
Maybe, but if I did, then I don't remember.
He was Hamlet, and it is very, very bad. Like it's funny because I'm reading the like like you do when I watch these I read about them, because I'm curious, and the reviews were all like it's takes out all the nuance and it's loud and it's annoying. And for the first 10, 15 minutes or so, I'm like, it's not that bad. It's exactly what I said. And then like, yeah, it gets further into it and it's awful. It's Robert De Niro is the monster and he's like 5 foot tall. So he's the same height as Frankenstein. So he's not bigger than him. And he's not like all that horrible looking. He just kind of looks like a scarred man. So like, there's a point where the old man is teaching him English and like he's like teaching him or whatever, and he's like, people are scared of me, and I'm like, why? Just say you're like a disfigured man or like a person who got injured in a war. Like lie and say you're human. People will believe you. You more or less look like a regular man. Like you'll be fine. You'll be fine in regular society. You can get by. And there's a bit, the one bit of it that was that was of note. Which there's how he's created in this version is like, it's not like he's on a table and there's a lightning storm like the original. Now it's like Frankenstein essentially creates what is a womb and fills it with amniotic fluid and basically like births this corpse in this like tube, and the monster like bursts out of it and he's completely naked. And for whatever reason, Kenneth Branagh has making the creative choice to show you the monster's penis. And you see that he's got a penis, which just made me go, why did you give him a penis?
Because he's supposed to be a man.
I don't understand this. Like, it just sort of seems functionally like there's not really a need. Just the idea of him like sewing on this penis, being like he needs a penis. He's got to have a penis. But it's otherwise the performances are bad. Like whenever characters die, it's so over the top, like to like an unrealistic degree. But like the monster is super like subdued and laid back, and it's one of those performances where I'm like, is the idea supposed to be that the monster is more human-like than the humans? Because the humans aren't acting like humans; they're acting like weird people. And like every time he does a dramatic scene, he does this like obnoxious thing where he spins the camera around the actors like 100 times to make it look like more dramatic. And you're like, oh my god, this is making me nauseous. And it's just overall like it's not a good movie. The performances are bad. The direction is bad. Not the few times you'll hear me say the direction is bad, but the direction is so bad. Yeah, it takes all of the nuance out of and the simplicity out of Frankenstein. Just not very good. And it's funny because it's described as being an accurate adaptation. It's like, I guess maybe the most accurate adaptation, but it's not. One of the things though that's interesting, I think the Mary Shelley one makes this point. And the Bride of Frankenstein, he also says it, where he's like, oh, he wants to create life. And the thing that drove me crazy about the 1930s one is no one ever says to him, but Frankenstein, everyone, the book is less about creating life and about bringing back the dead, more about bringing back the dead, because as someone points out in the second thing I watched that I hadn't seen was I watched the 2011 Benedict Cumberbatch play, where the gimmick is on one night Benedict Cumberbatch plays the monster, and then the next night he plays Frankenstein, and then the guy vice versa, they swap. So one guy's playing Frankenstein, one guy's playing the monster, and then the next night they switch. And someone who has done theater, all I could think about is, man, having to learn two completely separate parts and all the blocking.
That sounds like hell.
I know, and all the dialogue. And it sounds like, yeah, it sounds very difficult. I have huge respect for it. But there's a point where he's like, I need to learn how to create life. And his wife is like, well, you could just give me a baby, and that's creating life, which is the thing that drove me crazy about that 1930s one, where it's like, Yeah, every human has the capability of creating life between their legs, betwixt the
I was gonna,
thighs.
s- I was gonna say, I was waiting patiently to be able to make the joke. Dude wants to make life. Sounds like dude needs to get laid.
Right, yeah, exactly. Everyone's got that. So it's like for me, Frankenstein has always been less about creating
No,
life and more
the
about
point was
control.
always that he wanted to bring things back from the
But
dead.
more that he wanted to control death and control life rather than creating it. Because yeah, so there's a line where she says that in that play, and that's all leading me to the point that that play's bad. It's a very bad play. Well, at least I think it's bad. Like the first 20 minutes of it are just the monster wriggling around on stage and like, "Ugh," and it's really dull. It's like after 5 minutes, I'm like, I get the point. I get the point. He's childlike. I get it. I get, and it's just like yeah, it's just not it's told from the perspective of the monster. So it dispatches with all of Frankenstein's backstory, and it starts from the point where the monster is born, and it basically turns the instead of the monster being the quote unquote bad guy, now Frankenstein's the quote unquote bad guy, and it's like it it's about how the monster kind of sort of slowly more and more becomes more monstrous. Starts off innocent, becomes more monstrous, and every version of Frankenstein culminates in him killing the wife. Every version, but this version, and I hate it, is an addiction I hate. I hate it so much, and I hate using this phrase. But if you're adverse to hearing about sexual violence, you plug your earmuffs. But instead of him simply killing the wife, he rapes her as well. He rapes and kills her, and they show it on stage, and it's bad. It's an unnecessary addition. Like him killing her is enough. That's enough savagery. It didn't need additional savagery. It's uncomfortable to watch. As a person who's done theater, it made me uncomfortable because I thought about all the rehearsals that poor woman had to do, all the performances that poor woman had to do.
I mean, the poor woman and the poor man who had to pretend to do it.
I
There in
mean,
that in that instance, it's unpleasant on both
I
sides.
mean, yeah, yeah. I just who has ever experienced Frankenstein and been like, you know what, this needs sexual violence. It's just like it just wasn't good. It's just like I don't know why you needed to add this. It just doesn't add anything to that moment. Um, and there, to be fair, it's not devoid of anything to like. There's a few, like there's a couple of a couple of bits of staging, which as a performer I was kind of blown by. But like there's a moment where the monster lifts a kid up onto his shoulder and is carrying this kid around on his shoulder. Which like it's one thing to do that once on film with people around you making sure it's safe. It's another to do it on stage in front of thousands of people live. Like the amount of trust you'd have to build with the person you do that with, like trusting your kid on another, like is a lot. And again, I respected that. I respected a lot of the stagecraft that went into the performance, but the writing and some of the changes to the Frankenstein story, I'm like, I don't like this. It doesn't work for me. But with that, I want to wrap up my talking about Frankenstein with telling you something that's interesting. Because as I was watching Frankenstein, I became interested in the idea of, is this possible? Like, where does this come from? Is the science real? Could you bring a body back to life? Like, is there any basis in science? And,
Well,
well,
sorry, go ahead.
surprisingly, this does have scientific basis. It does come from a place. When Mary Shelley was writing this, they first discovered the idea of putting electricity through a body and reanimating it. And there's a famous guy whose name has completely escaped me,
Mm.
who he would tour a show where he did that, where he would put electricity through frogs and animals and bring them back to life. And his most infamous
I was
moment,
gonna say,
let me finish real quick. His most infamous moment was when he did it to a human. He did it to a human corpse, and he brought a human corpse back to life. And it was apparently horrifying, and it was absolutely upsetting.
I was gonna say, theoretically, yes, you could bring and this was, I think, is the point in a lot of the Frankenstein's plays that you get the variations. Is it's like bringing the flesh back to life is the easy part. Getting muscles to move, that's just electricity moving through body. Not too complicated to achieve. The thing that uh if we're getting into the realistic part of it, the thing that would be hard to bring back is what some people refer to as the soul, the
Yeah,
spark of life, the thing that makes a person a person.
that and that's
That's
the
what's hard. That's
yeah
what's hard to bring
that
to
that's that's
life.
that's that's the point of Frankenstein. That's the whole point. Is that they viewed that as an affront to God. But the other interesting bit is the putting electricity through the body. But the other part that it comes from, the idea of bringing people back to life, was that they had recently discovered when she wrote Frankenstein the idea of resuscitating people from drowning. So like
Oh yeah,
yeah, so like the idea that people would die when they would drown, and then you could bring them back to life. So that's where
right.
that idea of being able to bring a person back from death comes from, which I thought that was very fascinating. I thought that was very interesting. So that was
Yeah.
Frankenstein, Dracula, the Invisible Man, and the Mummy. We talked about them today. That was all very interesting. But with that, we come to the assignment for next week. The assignment for next week, Jordan, is it's a twist. It's a mystery. So I want you to pick. I want you to pick some mystery movies. Movies with a mystery. Movies with a twist. It can have a twist and not be a mystery movie specifically, but maybe watch some mystery movies. And for the first time, I'm not going to say you have to watch them. These are not required, but I'm going to make suggestions for you. For ones maybe you haven't seen. You should check out Knives Out. Both of them.
Knives Out.
You would like those movies. But mysteries abound. And the question will be, is this a good mystery? Is it a bad mystery? Did you figure out the mystery? How early did you solve the mystery? Is there a twist? Did you figure out the twist? All these questions and more next week. But if you're looking to see us more, if you're like, man, I wish I could see those guys just a little bit more. Today, to this very day, we will be appearing on, I believe it's the Arete podcast. We're gonna be on the Arete podcast with our good friend Jake, talking about Godzilla again. We're gonna talk some Godzilla stuff, and his podcasts are usually loosey goosey, so I'm sure we'll talk about some other stuff. But that's gonna come later today. That's gonna be fun. I myself, just me. I don't know when it's coming out, but I will eventually be appearing on the Party Your Broadway World podcast. We're going to talk about My Fair Lady. I have opinions on that. So look forward to that. That's a bit of shameless self-promotion at the end of the podcast. Thanks again to Trophy Smack for sponsoring this episode.
Check out the link.
Check out the link in the description below. You can find me, as always, on TikTok. I'm on TikTok at Justin Spurr. You can find me there. Jordan, where can they find you?
I do Minecraft Monday on Twitch. Zepgore187. Come
Yeah.
join.
You can also find us on Discord. You can. Oh, I need to update. Don't let me forget. I need to update the Discord link in our link. But you can also find us. We're on Discord, and you can email the show. All of those links and more, obviously, are in the description. You're supposed to end this by being. I never do this, but like, subscribe, follow. Like a few shorts, check out the rest of the channel. Thank you for tuning into another episode of the show. We will see you guys all next week. Have a good one.
Bye.
And we are out. We are out. We are out. No!